Weirding Way Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, where we take a look at Indian cinema, old and new, mostly from the perspective of someone who's not Indian, namely your host, Chris Dashew. And I am joined by a very good friend of mine on this episode of the show. He is the host of a movie podcast of his own right, but not solely Indian cinema. But you have covered some Indian cinema on your show. My good friend and yours, the Projection Booth's Mike White.
Yeah, can't get much whiter than me.
It's in the name, folks. What do you expect?
It's right there.
Yeah. So, Mike, since this is the first time that you are on the Bollywood Cinema Club, I wanted to ask you, since I've kind of asked everybody who've been on the show so far, before we talk about the movie, because I know we're going to have a lot to talk about, tell me a little bit about your background with Indian cinema as a whole.
Well, I came to it through film studies classes. So I was seeing the Panther Panchali films, and I know that I'm butchering that. So the Sanjit Ray films, I saw one in one class and I saw another in another class and didn't realize that they were part of a trilogy, the Apu trilogy. So fuck me, right? So that's totally different than what a lot of people now, when they hear about Indian cinema, what comes to mind. I don't think there was any singing, any dancing. It was very, very kind of felt almost like a new wave type of film.
Sure.
And then years later, I was talking about cinema with a friend of mine, coworker, Somya, and she was asking, "Oh, are you interested in Indian films?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'd love to see Indian films. I've never really seen like a typical Indian film before." And so she hooked me up with a soundtrack for Rangila and then also the movie of it. So I watched that, which we talked about on the Culture Cast a few months ago, I think.
Yeah, we talked about it in, Bollywood Cinema Month of 2022. Yeah.
And then I saw Muthu and a few other films. And then it's kind of just been like touch and go as far as what I see. I'm not seeking a lot of stuff out other than Triple R, actually, because I just kept hearing great things about it. But for the most part, you've been my conduit to a lot of great Indian cinema.
Wow.
Yeah,
well,
hats off to you, sir.
I feel like I feel a little proud of that, frankly.
You should.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. And what's funny is this movie came out this year. It's brand new. And it's not that I didn't have any intention of covering it, but I was waiting for someone to say, let's talk about it. Because if you've seen clips of this movie out of context, it makes it look like the most insane movie ever made.
It is.
And it kind of is. Kind of in the vein of another movie that we'll probably talk about in the future at some point. I don't know if you've seen it, but before we talk about Triple R, have you seen Bahubali 1 or 2?
No.
Okay, so Bahubali it's like this movie, but it's like this movie. It's directed by S.S. Rajamouli. It's about, it's more about I guess it's kind of about it's kind of about this. I don't want to butcher it, but it's essentially about a half god named Bahubali, but it's an epic movie just like this one. And so that, when I started watching this movie, I was like, oh my God, I've seen this before, but you have not seen Bahubali before.
No.
Okay. So just for the audience, just to put that out there. So our reactions are going to be a little different than if we had seen Bahubali, because some of this stuff is kind of from that. But on this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we're going to be taking a look at S.S. Rajamouli's RRR from 2022, otherwise known as Rise, Roar, and Revolt. So yeah, the film is directed by S.S. Rajamouli, and it stars N.T. Ramarao Jr. as Bheem and Ram Charan Teja as Raju. And boy, I mean, there are a lot of other people in the movie, but you look at the poster, you've seen the previews, you know who the main characters are. who the main actors are. And the film follows these are two real life people, Raju and Beam. And they took the British Raj to task in the 1920s. And they actually helped free the southern Indian portion of India from the British. And so this is based off of a real story, but it's like saying Iron Man is based off of a real story, because there are some things in this movie that are, well, we'll get to them when we get to them. But Mike, you were the one who said you wanted to watch this movie, and you saw it and then wanted to watch. You saw it and then you were like, we need to cover this.
Oh yeah.
Right. So tell me about your first viewing and your initial thoughts on RRR.
I was reminded a lot of John Woo while I was watching this. The use of slow motion, the real epicness of everything. I know that's not really a word, but
it is. It totally is.
It's so epic. And then the whole story of the undercover policeman infiltrating this other guy's group, and just that everybody has their own motivations. And other than the British, everybody's motivations are very, very pure. And it's all this doing the wrong thing for the right reason. And I love the use of flashbacks that we have in here. I love the story structure. And I have to say, they really pulled the rug out from under me several times where I just did not see what was coming. And I have now seen this movie 3 times because it is just that friggin' good. And there are amazing, kind of again, like John Woo, there are amazing set pieces, but the whole thing just comes together and gels so well that despite this being over 3 hours long, it just moves. I'm never bored. I am always entertained watching this.
I was surprised that at no point in this movie was there a da na 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 na. That's what it reminded me of. So much of A Better Tomorrow. Like in a lot of ways, like it was weird. Like, how did we watch A Better Tomorrow 3 times this year, but in 3 separate cinema types? Because we watched it here, and then I believe I watched it with Indian cinema earlier this year. I'm trying to remember what the movie was that A Better Tomorrow either was based on, or was it inspired A Better Tomorrow? And now this, I mean, it has that same 2 guys from the separate sides of the river or separate sides of the wall. That's what it was. It was the oh my God, what the fuck is the name of that movie? I literally just watched it when we talked about it with Richard. Oh my God, hold on. I feel like such an idiot now. I even brought up A Better Tomorrow on that episode of the show, and I had it on the tip of my tongue and I forgot it.
I was thinking more hard boiled just because of the undercover policeman type of thing.
Oh,
but I can see what you're talking about with Kit and stuff. And well, I don't know. Kit with his brother and that whole thing, I can see that, but I really see much more of the 2 characters in Hard Boiled, especially one's on one side of the law, the other one's pretending to be a criminal, but he's actually a really good guy. So that's where I was coming from with this stuff. But yeah, I can see A Better Tomorrow. I can see the killer in here as well. So this hits all those high points of John Woo for me.
Yeah. So that movie was Diwar, which means the wall. And it's about 2 brothers on opposite sides. So, yeah, I mean, these guys in this movie aren't brothers. They're kind of, I mean, by the end of it, they would probably call one another brother. So it kind of doesn't really, it's kind of a moot point. But no, to your point that, that was, of all the people that I like see the influence in this movie of, it's John Woo. Like, and I'm not saying and nobody else, but the parts of this movie that you've seen out of context are all action, crazy slow-mo. I mean, you could even make the case, like, again, that the more contemporary example is someone like Zack Snyder. But I wouldn't say that because this is actually good.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's a heavy
subject. Yes. Even though it's a heavy subject matter, it isn't oppressive. You feel terrible for people, but you care about people. Whereas with Zack Snyder people, I don't care about any of the protagonists or the antagonists. I don't care about anybody in his movies. Whereas here, it's like the smallest character is either a great hero or an awful villain. And the guy who comes in and needs his motorcycle fixed is just like, fuck that guy. I fucking hate that guy. Right. Like beating people in the shop and everything. I'm just like, oh my God, he's terrible. So then when he comes back later on, I'm just like, yeah, Yeah, I'm really glad that deer's got very pointy horns.
Yeah. Oh my. Oh dear God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh lordy, lordy. Yeah. So I had, again, like yourself, I had never seen this movie before, but I had seen the first Bahubali, so I was like, all right, this is from the same director, so maybe it will be different. And first 5 minutes of the movie, I was like, nope. This is a big. This is really. If you're a Westerner coming to this movie and you've never seen Indian cinema before, like, I wouldn't say it's like a Marvel movie, because I don't even think that's an apt enough comparison, but like the stakes are being presented as that high,
Oh yeah.
which I appreciate. Like, again, like this movie, the stakes in this movie are the freedom of your people. And again, given what we've seen in real life in the last forever with the British and the way they treated the Indian people as a whole, like, yeah, they are a constant villain in Indian cinema.
Oh yeah.
Um, um,
I was reminded a little bit of Lagan as well
Right.
while I was watching this.
yeah, me too. I was thinking like, oh, again, in Lagan, they're not as evil, at least not as violent. But because in
Right.
this movie, in this movie, you have the British characters murdering people, like just essentially with wanton abandon, torturing them, beating them up, maiming them. Again, this movie pulls no punches, which I really appreciate. Because again, like, it's in this day and age with Western cinema, I feel like with a lot of films, there are no stakes anymore. Like, I am not really worried. Like in a movie like this, in the States, like, they might not spend all the time building the characters, but this movie is 3 hours long. And I feel like by the end of the movie, I want to see the next one.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I want to see the next 2 or 3 or however many more they make. But the characters that have been created of Bheem and Raju they're so fully realized. And I feel like I'm repeating myself every time I watch Indian cinema. These characters are always so fully realized, but they are. I don't know why in Western cinema we have this idea of movies have to be short and they can't exceed a certain length. But when you watch a movie like this or so many Indian cinema films, they take that 3 hours and it feels like they could have given it 2 more. And I probably still would have watched it. And would I had to have broken it up into 2 viewings? Sure. But even by the end of this movie, I'm like, I could watch more. Like, let's keep going here. But by the end of it, like, I'm always so pleased when we finish one of these Indian cinema films. And by the end of it, I'm like, I understand these characters so intimately in a way that, like, I just don't understand why Western cinema has a hard time writing believable characters. But like, I don't know what it is, but in these movies, I believe them like whole cloth.
Well, and what we always talk about the music, and people are so, averse to musicals. In this movie, there's only really, there's the end song, which is completely appropriate, very much celebration.
Right.
There's the, for lack of a better term, nacho song that happens at the party, nacho, 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 nacho. And then the rest of the songs are there to explain what's going on in the film, or just to reinforce things that are going on. Just like, hey, these 2 guys, are they ever going to find out what's really going on with them? They're really coming together and they're like brothers now, but there's going to be problems later on. And I like that it's telling us all these things. It's almost more like a Greek chorus kind of thing, where it's just like, okay, you're watching this montage, but here's really what's happening behind the scenes. I was like, that's really cool. And so it wasn't one of those like, all right, we're going to stop and have a musical number. And the more of Indian cinema I watch, the more I realize that that's pretty much the norm. It's not the Western style 1950s type of musical where it's like, oh, you want to talk about jam and bread, honey? Oh, wait, well, let's talk about it. And like, and here we go, have a whole song about jam and bread.
Right. Yeah, no, it's interesting. That was kind of one of the things that I noticed. And Bahubali is similar, but this one really leans on that even more of like, I'm not willing to take my movie and inject music the way you anticipate it's going to be injected. Because like you said, most of the time, especially in the more kind of dramatic films, the music just kind of springs out of out of the action, just seemingly out of nowhere. And I really appreciate in this movie that they use the music in a way to further explain what's going on in these scenes and kind of let you know kind of where the story is and where the story is going without exposition dumping. Because it's almost exposition. It's musical exposition in a way, but it totally works.
And the non-sung songs, the actual score of the film is so compelling. And there's so many great themes that come up and you're just like, wow. Like as soon as the music starts in certain places, you're just like, oh, fuck, this music signals that something really big is about to happen. I love it.
You mean that scene towards the end of the movie where they're like, shine the spotlights on him. And then all of a sudden he's backlit, like Raju's backlit, like the god Rama. Yeah. Yes. Moments like that make me not only take pause, they make me like just genuinely appreciate that somebody is still making movies like this. And again, you know what? Do I wish that somehow a Westerner could capture this energy? Sure. But like, I'm so glad that an entire country of people have harnessed it entirely. Cause like, that's the thing about this movie. It's so, even though you have characters being murdered, even though you have characters being bashed over the head and, you know, maimed and stuff, it's still such a, like, not a joyous movie, but kind of like, I don't know how it's.
Yeah.
It kind of is. Like by the end of the movie, you really are like so enthralled with the characters. But yeah, oh my God, the music in this movie is just, it reminds me of when John Williams' music really hits in those early like Indiana Jones and Star Wars movies. Those like really rousing moments. It does that in a way that like, again, like it's just M.M. Keeravani, like, look, you know, as someone who loves Indian cinema, but is more familiar with less contemporary stuff, he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. And so is S.S. Rajamouli, because man, I mean, again, what's insane about this movie is it is just a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how else anyone would explain it. And S.S. Rajamouli himself has said it's essentially a meeting between two superheroes because the characters of Bheem and Raju are seen as such because they're real life revolutionaries. Now, can we talk about how just start naming the crazy things that happen in this movie? Oh my God in heaven. So, we're introduced to the character of Bheem by him fist fighting a tiger.
Yes.
In the jungle.
Well, even before that, he's standing there half dressed, just that little, panties got on, pouring that blood over him. He's so well built, all muscular and hairy and glistening. And I'm just like, wow, the fetishization of these guys is amazing. It's like, I was just there for them. I was just like, my God. And then when you see the other one with his shirt off, you're just like, holy shit, these guys are built like shit, brick shit houses. These are amazing, just specimens of masculinity. And they're not afraid to show it.
No. And what's funny is in Bahubali, the actor who plays Bahubali isn't Jack, but they like CGI'd him.
What?
And it looks strange. Huh. But they gave him like CGI like abs, essentially. Wow. It's not great. And so I was worried because I was like, oh my God, is it going to be the same thing where, again, Bahubali, I think was like a good primer for this movie, but this is the most expensive Indian cinema film ever made. It's a $72 million movie, which is crazy that's as expensive as it's been because Endgame was what, like 300, 500 million.
Yeah. I mean, crossing 100 mil mark is not that unusual these days, which is hilarious because, when I was coming up in the world, it was like, oh my God, Waterworld is so expensive. It's such a disaster. And it's like, that's a drop in the bucket now. Yeah. And I'm kind of pun intended on that one.
Yeah. Endgame had a budget of $400 million.
Wow.
And this movie had a budget of 71. And what's crazy is, I guess not even crazy. What I love about this movie is it looks amazing too.
Oh yeah.
Bahubali had an issue with the CGI not looking great. And like everybody I've talked to has said as much, like, oh, the CGI is not great, but the movie's kind of equally as nuts and crazy. I mean, you have a character climbing up floating waterfalls and it's worth checking out. Okay. Do not let me dissuade you from checking it out. It's on Netflix. It's just, if this is your jam, Bahubali is like this a little less, but it's still in that same vein. Again, because these are real people, and that's more like telling the story of the gods or the demigods. But I was really worried that when they showed the two actors, it was going to be like CGI abs again. But no. Ram Charan and N.T. Ramarao Jr. are fucking ripped. In a way that it's not that I wasn't expecting it, but like they're shirtless most of the movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love
Whenever
it.
they have the opportunity, they are taking off their shirts.
Yeah. And posing epically.
Oh, God.
Like you said, like that, what's weird is we really rag on people like Zack Snyder for something like 300, like overutilizing slow-mo and really just like, oh, this is cool. It's got to be slow-mo. You're flicking a toothpick or lighting a cigarette or something. And in this, it's like there is a scene of slow motion where Raju is standing on the front of the boat with the sun behind him, and he's just like pulling off from the shore, and it's in slow motion. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I'm here for this. And it's so interesting to watch the way SS Rajamouli uses slow-mo, because again, it is such kind of this weird like lightning rod in Western cinema now recently, like using slow-mo and like overusing it. And what's weird is this movie uses it a lot, but I'll tell you something, I didn't notice it at all. Which, like, there was maybe one scene I noticed it towards the end where, because of course they're on one another's shoulders at the end of the movie.
Oh my God, yes.
Because of course they are.
Yeah.
They flip up onto like a tower, and that's kind of the one scene where I was like, I understand why this is slow-mo because it looks cool, but like, man, this is the one
physics
time.
do not exist in this movie.
Right. Well, I wasn't even complaining about that. Like, yeah, physics don't exist in this movie. If that's the scene we're pointing at, we've forgotten the scene where he flies out of the van with all the tigers.
Yes. Oh my God.
Jesus fucking. Oh, okay. So we're introduced to one of the characters, Beam, by fighting a tiger in the jungle, and then we're introduced to Raju in an equally as insane way. So you have a large group of workers, and they're all very angry at the beginning of the film. And Raju is a police officer in the Indian Imperial Police, and so he's trying to help quell these kind of pro-independence gatherings. And this police station is surrounded by people. And this one guy takes a rock and hurls it and hits the picture of the king on the wall. It falls down. And of course, the shitheel British go get that guy. So they send Raju out to a group of people.
Oh, I don't think they send him. He just volunteers. He's just like, okay, yep, here I go. into what would be in a zombie movie a horde of people.
Oh, God, and I don't know how to describe what happens other than sheer chaos. Just like one of the more like claustrophobic fight scenes I think I've seen in a film in a long since Game of Thrones, actually. There's a scene in the second last season of Game of Thrones where Jon Snow is like clawing his way out of this pile of people. And there's a shot in this movie where I've never seen it in a movie before. I've never seen it in anything. You have essentially a ceiling of people over where they're shooting, and then they're shooting underneath them as the character of Raju is being pushed and pulled by people. But the people are providing a human canopy for the light. And so you're filming in essentially like a 2x2 space. And I've never seen that shot before. All I could think was, how has nobody ever done this?
Right. And then the audio, it's like all closed in as well. And you just hear him and the crowd going on, but then you hear him struggling, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. He reminded me of Ogami Ito, where it's just like, oh, there's an army of like 1,000 people. Don't worry, Ogami Ito will get through it. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, yes, he takes a few licks, but he's able to walk in or run into that compound after he gets the one guy out of thousands of people and takes on this entire crowd, and basically he disrupts the entire thing. And so by the end, most people are going home or have already left. It's amazing.
Yeah. And what does he use? What is he using? A gun or a sword? No, he's using a stick.
Yeah. Just his nightstick. That's all.
Yeah. When he jumps over that wall, I was like, oh my God. Because that's the first scene that's the first action scene of the movie. And it sets the tone.
Yeah. Well, what is even before that, to back up, is that whole thing with the little girl, Mala, being kidnapped basically from the village and getting introduced to the film's villains. The head of the military in India, the white guy, and his, oh my God, bloodthirsty wife. she just carries around whips with thorns on them. I'm like, what? Okay, she's just so wants to see people hurt. She's just wonderfully evil. Both of them are super evil. The main guy, the main bad guy, so reminds me of like a Jackie Chan villain. Like, probably because he's maybe speaking English, but I don't know how many different voices have been put into his mouth.
In the version that I watched, it's Ray Stevenson. He was speaking English.
He was that was his whole thing. Okay.
Yeah,
because he was speaking English in mine, but I'm just like, was he dubbed at some point?
I don't think so. It sounded like him.
Okay,
I love Ray Stevenson.
That couple, what a power couple, and just like, oh yeah, just throw a couple coins at these Indian people, and we're just going to steal your daughter. Thanks, we really like how she sings. She's a songbird to them, and they just take her out of the jungle.
Yeah. It was weird. Like I didn't know that Ray Stevenson was in this movie, and he's been in, he was the Punisher in that second Punisher movie. He was in the MCU at one point.
He doesn't look like the Ray Stevenson I'm used to. I didn't recognize him at all.
That's what I was wondering. Like, I was like, did you? Because I know who that is, because you did a whole episode on Punisher Warzone on your show. Yeah, Ray Stevenson, he's fucking great in this movie. You're completely right. He felt like such a Jackie Chan movie villain,
right?
Like, and again, like, what's funny is this. We talk about John Woo, but the other person that I would compare this movie to, like, tonally, is a lot of the Jackie Chan Hong Kong movies that we've talked about. This movie's not as funny and as slapsticky, but it's like 1 degree away. You know what I mean? It's what it feels like, because it is there. I mean, this movie is not deathly serious. It is a fun time. It does not take itself. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it is a serious movie.
One of my coworkers, who now, it's like, I'm very lucky. I work with Indian people very often. And so my coworker at this job, Shrunga, she recommends movies to me all the time. And I was like, oh, I saw RRR. And she's like, oh, that was too violent for me. I couldn't watch it. And I was like, really? And then I was rewatching the movie for the third time, and Andrea was in the room, and she had saw it before, and she was just like, I'm having a hard time with all this violence in here. And it was all the violence of the white people against the Indian people. And I was like, yes, I understand, but we're supposed to hate on all of these villains. And she was like, it's just too much. Can you fast forward? Because she just hated seeing these poor innocent people being beaten. And I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, but it's kind of crucial to the movie.
Well, I mean, the whole scene where Beam is being whipped by Raju is rough to watch. I mean,
oh yeah,
I think for me, I wonder, it's not that I wonder about whether or not the violence was enough, but the violence, I don't know. The violence for me was one of those things where I like with those Jackie Chan movies, I get it. Like, I feel like it has to push it to that point. So by the time we get to the end of the movie, where, like, I would say the shit hits the fan, but like where the movie goes completely bonkers, it's like, I want to see Ray Stevenson and Allison Doody, of all people, just get demolished. Like, I want to see them get theirs in the worst way. And I will say, I'm actually kind of disappointed that they don't get it more than they get it. Because, again, like you mentioned, the entire plot of the film revolves around a young girl taken from her village because they bought her from the parents, and the parents unknowingly sold their child.
Right. Yeah, they had no idea.
It's never explained why they bought her, what's the point of buying her, why they didn't just go and get an Indian child from somewhere else. Clearly, they're rich and powerful enough to do so. It's never explained, but like you said, they're written as like dastardly mustache twirling villains, but that is exactly what this movie needed. Because again, I don't want to have, there is a character in this movie, and I honestly kind of feel like it goes really underdeveloped. The Olivia Morris character, Beam's love interest. I feel like it's almost forgotten in the last the second half of the movie. Second half of the movie becomes Raju's film in a big way with all the flashbacks that we've talked about or haven't talked about, but you've mentioned. But I think it's really smart because, like you mentioned, with something like Lagan, that movie kind of is not as violent and kind of aggressive as this movie, so you can paint the British in a little bit more of a sympathetic light. Not saying you should, but in this movie, it's like 100% perfect that they're these mustache twirling, miserable, terrible. Like they're terrible. They're just awful.
Yes. Yeah, and it's really in Lagan, it's more the threat of what's happening, especially this whole thing of like, you guys, you're not getting any rain. You can't give us enough of the tariff that we're charging you, your crops basically. And because this guy has come and humiliated us, basically, we are going to double it or triple it. And it's more that threat of starvation rather than that outright violence that we have here. Yes, there is violence in there, but I would say the main guy from Lagan, the main villain, is probably the same tier as the guy who challenges them to the dance-off in this one, who never really comes back after that.
Right. Well, yeah, because this movie has a dance-off too.
Yeah, dance-off, bro.
Yeah, which not out of place. I like the kind of the second quarter of this movie where it's really exploring the relationship between Beam and Raju growing and like seeing them and the montage of them. It reminded me a lot of Sholay, that kind of the interplay between those two characters in that film. Look, I have not seen N.T. Ramarao Jr. or Ram Charan in anything else, but they're amazing. Their chemistry it's like the ultimate bromance, right?
Oh God.
Like I have friends who I'm pretty close with, but like I don't have any friends that I'm taking on my shoulders to shoot bow and arrows at people with. Their chemistry, like what's funny is their chemistry is so good. I don't need Olivia Morris. I don't need Alia Bhatt. And Alia Bhatt, it was weird. Like I saw her in Gully Boy last year. That movie's amazing. If you haven't seen it, it's about an up and coming hip hop rapper in Mumbai. Okay. But she plays the girlfriend of the main character. And so when I saw her in this movie, I was like, okay, like they don't introduce her until the first hour and a half of the movie is gone. Like, no exaggeration. All of a sudden it cuts to her and you're like, wait, what? What movie is this? But I honestly don't think this movie needed love interests. I think the love interests are the two leads. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she does. The white lady plays an important role insofar as getting into the castle, for lack of a better term, into there. So that's good. But
she shows up at the end of the movie almost like out of the blue. It's like, here is this, and this. It's like, where have you been? And also like, why are you okay with this? Like, I didn't get the sense that the movie didn't do enough to build their relationship. I needed like 2 or 3 more scenes, really, or just don't have it at all.
She needed a crisis of faith as well. Because she is just, like, oh, that's terrible. But she's so clueless throughout the whole thing. Like when he gets that bracelet and puts the marks on the bracelet, or sorry, bangle, as they keep saying, and then gives it to her. And then the little girl, Mala, gets it and she's just so excited. And, the lady just never really figures it out. I'm like, okay, and like she never really has that moment where she's just like, oh, we stole this girl and he's coming at, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. I mean, like, I don't mind that at all. And she's very attractive. And I like that romance that they have, like the one scene and how he memorizes her saying, "Don't call me madam, it's Jenny, okay?"
That's not her name, bro.
Right. I love that.
It almost feels like that joke is used to build their relationship, two leads, not her and him. And that's like, I don't know. What's funny is in a movie that's 3 hours long, somehow they don't even have enough time to really flesh out the love interests.
Mm-hmm.
So Alia Bhatt, I mean, they both need to be there, I guess, but I don't know. The structure of the movie doesn't lend itself to I don't know. It doesn't lend itself to a second half character introduction very well. Like at the second half of the movie, it's more about looking at the other characters that we've already met. And so introducing Alia Bhatt's character essentially at the halfway point of the movie, it just feels very odd. It should have been like, I know that they're trying to save that twist until the scene with Beam being tortured is over and he gets taken out in the police car and Raju is like standing there and you're like, oh my God, like he's, what has he done? But, or wait, does that come before that scene or after?
It comes pretty late in the film, though they give you little glimpses of it. And I like that too, because there's just one moment where we get a quick flash of his dad and we get that introduction of the whole idea of how much a bullet costs from that very first scene. And then when we get it again later on, you're just like, oh, okay. And then we'll get it a third time at the very end. It pays off very well. But yeah, having that scene where it is, having the flashback start where it does, I think is really important because we have to now suddenly reevaluate his character all the way through and even think about that very first scene that we were talking about with him where he's fighting the crowd and you're just like, oh, he's doing whatever he can to get that promotion so that he can get in charge of these arms and give them to his people. And suddenly everything starts to click. So watching this a second time, I was like, I appreciate this a lot more, even though I did do that reevaluation. But watching it again with that in mind, I was like, oh, I see what he's doing here. Oh, this makes a lot more sense. And then you really start to sympathize with him a lot more than you did the first time, where you're just like, man, I hope that fucking snake just kills this guy, man. I hope he dies in the gutter, this piece of shit.
Well, but you're completely right. I mean, they do not reveal the twist of this movie until an hour and a half in. And then the big twist is that the character of Raju is also a revolutionary. He's just going about it in a different way than Beam. Beam is fight the power up front, and he is trying to subvert their ability to fight from inside by rerouting weapons to the people of his village, because that he leaves his village, he leaves Sitha and goes, hey, I'm not coming back until I've got weapons for everybody. And yeah, and you don't learn that until an hour and a half in when you get this one. It's the part of the movie that's really hard to watch.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So you have Ajay Devgan who plays Raju's dad, and you get this extended flashback of when the British came calling for his dad, because his dad was also a revolutionary who was trying to stand up to the British. And his father finds out that Raju is uncharacteristically good with a gun. And so what ends up happening, the British show up and there is a 1v100 gunfight where there are 100 British soldiers shooting at Raju's father, and in the melee, I guess his mom dies, his brother dies.
Oh, yeah.
And then he has to blow his own dad up, which is just like,
yeah.
This movie is
very
epic.
John Woo, right?
Yeah, it's so epic.
It's so, to me, when Tony has to kill his boss in Hard Boiled and like turns and gives that smile to Anthony Wong, and then when he keeps turning and it's just the audience looking at him, you get to see the pain in his face. It's one of those moments for me where you're just like, my God, what you just had to do for your father, and just that's given him now this mission in life in order to do all this, and he's doing whatever he can in order to fulfill what he considers his destiny. It's just like, holy shit, man. And I have to say, he's the revolutionary. Beam, like, he kind of becomes a revolutionary, but really he's just there for Mala at first, but he's kind of the protector of all of the, he's the protector of the tribe out in the forest. And he feels like and I like, we haven't even talked about the elements, that the Raju represents fire and then Beam represents water. I mean, basically he is an elemental being. He is this, to me, he's like the spirit of the forest that's coming out and taking care of Mala and bringing her back to her family. But if that means that he has to take out 1,000 British people, yeah, so be it. He's going to have to do whatever it takes in order to make things right with that situation back home.
Well, and like you've mentioned, the idea that one is water and one is fire is echoed over and
Over and
over and
over. Yeah.
over and over again. And there are these little kind of like interstitial credits because the actual credits for the movie aren't until like 40 minutes in on their own. The credits don't play until after the insane train wreck scene where there's a train that explodes on the underneath part of a bridge, and they manage to see one another from like essentially thousands of yards away, point at one another and go, "We're saving this kid who's on a boat underneath the bridge as all this fire and wreckage." And what do they do? What do they do, Mike? They jump off of the bridge with a rope tied around each one of them, and they just...
Oh, don't forget, one of them's riding a motorcycle, the other one's riding a horse. So we have the mechanism versus the nature kind of thing. Oh, I love that. When they're talking to each other through the hand signals, these guys have never talked to each other, never laid eyes on each other ever before. And there's Roger up on the bridge, just like doing these hand signals and being just like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's like, what? I'm glad you understand, because I would be thoroughly confused if I were one of these characters in this moment.
And then that he's got the revolutionary flag and uses the flag he dips it in the water after he jumps off of the thing, dips it in the water. So again, the water spirit, and we've got beam coming out through the fire, and like he wraps him in the flag so that he's protected when he goes back through the fire. And I'm just like, fucking A, this is amazing. And again, perfect use of slow-mo, perfect use of cutting, the music's there, everything is happening. And then afterwards, how they're like running to meet each other underneath the water.
Yes. Oh my, it's again, like, if anything, if anyone wants to complain about this movie lacking style, you've got no leg to stand on.
No.
But like, because it's just like, I have seen very few movies that can pull off being this stylized this well, while somewhat still feeling like they do exist in reality, quote unquote. I mean, there are some things that happen in this movie that are not realistic, like Raju jumping 30 feet over the fence initially. He just jumps from like, it's insane. Yeah. But like at the same time, if you go with the interpretation that these are superheroes, like, there you go. Yeah. And I like that about this. It's like, we're not going to explain to you, oh, he's got concrete skin or something. It's like, nope, like that's the spirit of fire and the spirit of water.
Right. Because these guys go through fucking hell in this movie. Yeah, I mentioned that whip earlier, that whole scene. Holy shit.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, you thought Passion of the Christ was bad. This is right up there, man. And this is such a martyr type of moment. This whole, you're going to fall to your knees and, ask for forgiveness. And he's just, nope, not going to fall to my knees. And that song, there's another song that comes out in that moment. And you're just like, yes, you are getting this crowd behind you. I love that moment.
Yeah, no, that moment, again, like you mentioned, I mean, there are these moments in this movie where it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And then you see the crowd like freak out collectively. Yeah. And it's like slow motion. They're like, ugh! And it's like, oh my God, like this movie, S.S. Ramajoli has such a finger on how to effectively get emotion out of the audience. And I was just, again, like it's so impressive in a way that I won't be surprised if this guy makes a film in Western cinema at some point in the next 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Next 10 years. Because I can't help but wonder if people on Netflix or producers stateside are going, oh my God, like, have you seen this movie? Like, this guy's making the kind of movies that people in this country would love to watch. People in our country would love to watch. And they would look past all of the bigger meaning and importance of this movie because, there's a guy fighting a fucking tiger, fist fighting him. And there's a lot more subtext to this movie, but like, this movie is totally the kind of thing that like American audiences are already lining up to see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Can you imagine seeing this in a movie theater? Seeing this with a crowd?
God. A crowd of people invested in this movie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
so like, like I mentioned, the nacho dance is fucking amazing. That's one thing where if you just are in a bad mood, you fast forward to that scene and you just watch that scene. That's one of those things where if that segment ends up on YouTube, I'm watching it 1,000 times. The other thing is when he shows up in that fucking lorry and he's got all the animals, like we don't know, like we saw him with the tiger. We don't know what he was doing with that tiger. You see him like a scene where a guy's feeding the tiger and you're just like, oh, he's got the tiger for some reason. And then when he shows up and not only he's got a tiger, he's got a jaguar, he's got stags.
He's got a stag for sure.
He's got this whole menagerie on the truck with him. And when he pulls and it stops and the tarp comes off and the slow motion hits and he's jumping out and all the animals are coming towards the camera and you get that side angle of all the animals coming and the music's pounding, I would be on my feet cheering my ass off in that movie theater because that is just so good. And then the mayhem after that, wow, when he fucking throws it like a cheetah at a guy, I'm like, what?
It's again like it, like I'm saying, like it is just, it's like primed already for someone in this, for like people in this country to see it and just be like that's the thing. This movie makes the Marvel movies look pedestrian.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and that's insanity to say, given the things that we've seen in those movies. But those Marvel movies, I never seen somebody throw a tiger at somebody.
No,
I never seen a stag stick its head through somebody's arms and wiggle around with them on it. And you know what I've never seen? A man riding a flaming carriage.
Yes.
5 minutes after another guy flies through with animals in a van. And he flies through on this flaming carriage after being bitten by a super poisonous venomous snake. And the carriage flips through the air and he's jumping and it's just.
Oh, and you get that slow-mo shot of him walking towards the camera and it looks like fireworks going off behind him. The one that does the big circle behind him. I'm like, oh, yes. What's like in the US, we've never been as oppressed as the Indian people. I don't think we could ever think of the emotions that are invested in this movie. You know, it's like even in a pretend way, like Thanos snaps away half the population. Loki wants to enslave people. He never does. Like we never get to that state where people are that oppressed, where the stakes are anywhere near as high. It's like, okay, there's a big blue laser that's going off in New York City. Me in Detroit, I don't care about that. But yet, if my entire country were being oppressed by this foreign rule that came in, and I mean, maybe you get this a little bit in some alien movies, but you never really get the scope of it. Whereas with this, I can feel it. I feel just how awful this other force is coming in and just being racist as fuck about everybody, treating everybody like servants, treating people like pieces of shit. You know, I mean, the guy getting passed over for promotion, it's like, okay, yeah, that's just one of 1,000 humiliation he's going to go through. The guy just battled 1,000 people for you, British people, and he gets passed over for a promotion. What?
And that is, and you know, you mentioned kind of an important part of this kind of Indian cinema, especially, and we kind of mentioned Lagan a couple times, and again, there are plenty of them. Those are just the two that, you know, this and that are the ones that come to mind off the top of the head. But the British Raj existed until 1947.
Yeah.
This is contemporary history. Like this movie is not taking place in 1845. This movie takes place in like the 1920s too.
The British would do such fucked up things just to fuck with people. Like the whole idea of, what was it? They would coat their bullets in pig fat when they were shooting at Muslim people, because the Muslims were just like, if we get, you know, hit with these, our souls are going to go straight to hell. And it's just like, yeah, they would just do that to fuck with people and just be complete assholes all the time.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, I'm not the kind of person to drag a country of people entirely, because there are plenty of people in Britain who had nothing to do with this. Yeah. But yeah, the treatment of the Indian subcontinent by the British Raj is just, like you said, we in the United States contemporarily have no frame of reference for that.
Right.
And we never, I mean, hopefully we never will. I can't believe realistically in this day and age we would. But there are people in the world who still deal with it, obviously. But yeah, it's such a big part of this. And it's a part that you can't overlook. And they don't. Lagan takes it to task immediately. This movie, the villains are the Brits. I mean, 100%. And they're painted again pretty broadly as baddies. And there's, like we've mentioned, there's like one somewhat sympathetic British character, but the rest of them are just, some of them have mustaches that they're twirling.
Yes.
Like Jesus Christ, the guy who plays essentially the second in command, Edward, is just like such a squirrely, sad, miserable person. And like the way he plays his character in this movie is perfect. Because just like it, like we mentioned, his character would feel at home in Lagan, 100%.
I talk a lot whenever we talk about like samurai films or spaghetti westerns. I talk about that hero's journey and that moment when the hero gets the snot just completely beaten out of him. You got Clint Eastwood and pretty much all of the Dollars movies, but especially I think Fistful of Dollars, same thing. Obviously, since it's a remake of Yojimbo, you've got poor Toshiro Mifune getting the shit kicked out of him and that as well. And you get that so often. You deal with Steven Seagal movies a lot. There's so much, especially in those early, really good ones, where he's down and out. That moment that reminded me of Full Contact. What was it? Was it Above the Law? Where he just is completely, he's been in a coma and all that kind of stuff. And in Full Contact, poor Chow Yun-fat's gotten a couple of his fingers blown off, has to relearn all that. In this movie, you get that twice because we have to have each one of our heroes getting the shit kicked out of them. And it's the one dude doing it to the other. It's like, oh man.
And what's funny is I actually really appreciated that kind of weird mirroring where Beam gets caught and Raju's kicking the shit out of him. And then Raju saves Beam, but Beam beats the shit out of him. So that he gets caught. And man, he was in there for a while. Because or unless Raju's hair grows real fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But when they showed him in that cell with the long hair, I was like,
doing the fucking pull-ups, and the music starts again. The music just kicks in right there, and you're just like, oh boy, something's going to happen.
Yeah, and then you notice Ray Stevenson noticing why he's pulling up and what he's doing every time he pulls up. He's staring at the palace where they are. It's just like, oh boy. You don't know what's coming your way, pal.
Oh yeah.
But when they show him from behind and they're talking about him to him and he's not responding. And it's just like, oh my God, he looks like a picture of vengeance. He's just ready. Yeah. He's just ready. Oh man. Yeah. And then when he the whole, because essentially the last hour of the movie is the breakout from the palace, from the barracks. And again, we've talked a little bit about the initial fight scene with the tigers and all of that. But man, the end of the movie when they're in the jungle fighting is just.
Oh, when he shoots the arrow and it goes through the tree and the guy narrowly avoids getting hit in the head with the arrow. And then he fucking kicks the arrow and kicks it through the guy's head. Like,
right?
Yes. Thank you so much. I was so happy about that.
Or the fact that you think that Beam is going to die. He's sitting there drinking water and they ambush him and oh my God, who came up with this? He's drinking water with the jug or the gourd a couple feet above his head, pouring the water, and the arrow goes through the water above his mouth to kill the guy who's about to shoot him. Like, guys, I don't think, if you haven't seen this movie and you're still questioning seeing it, like, this is like one of the things, like one of 100 plus things that happens in this movie that's just like, like, we didn't talk about the scene where Raju is driving to where Beam is going to be executed. This is kind of before where we were talking about before. And Ray Stevenson notices that he's getting kind of betrayed. And so somehow when his car gets hit by the tree that Raju brings down, he pops into the air. Yes. And he's standing on the car's windshield, one-handing a gun. It's just. Yeah, it's nuts. Everything that happens in this movie happens in the most epic way possible. I don't know how else to explain it.
This is the most movie I've seen in a long time.
Right? Like, that's kind of the best way of putting it. And I really expect this kind of film from like someone a lot less talented whose name is Snyder or Bay or any number of American cinema or American filmmakers who are just known for bombast with no style or with no substance behind it.
Right.
Like if this
all
were
style.
right, all style, no substance. I mean, if this were a Michael Bay or Zack Snyder film, I wouldn't care about those characters at the end of the movie.
No.
I would have no interest in continuing this story of Raj and Beam any further than the end of the film. But like I've said, by the end of the movie, I'm like, I would watch 2 more of these movies, 3 more of these.
God,
Make this a series, please. Like, I know that these are real people, but like I hope people who make Indian cinema films like making money too, because you've now got a franchise that you can do something with.
Yeah, but what would be the next one? What would it be called? Would it be 4 R's or would it be 6?
I think it would be 6. I love the title of this movie too. Like it's just triple R. RRR. Why not?
Yeah. What's it? Because I like how initially the R is in story, the R is in fire, the R is in water. And then when they show us the title, after they join hands in the water and it becomes the logo of the film, it's what? Rise, Revolt.
And Roar.
And Roar, yes.
Well, yeah, because all those animals.
That's right.
God, just the animal imagery in this movie with when they're fighting in the palace in the initial kind of scene where Beam is trying to save Molly. He has the scratches on his face.
Yes.
It's just, there's again, like it's such a stylistically interesting movie that I didn't expect it to have any substance, but then it has, I don't know, it has so much substance that by the end, like I said, by the end of it, it's just like, I want to watch this movie again. I want to watch this movie again. Like you've mentioned, I've seen it 2 times now, but I want to watch it a 3rd time because I'm sure that there will be other things that I notice this 3rd time outside of the insane action. I mean, this is an action movie, but there are quiet scenes where these characters are just talking to each other and like being really emotionally vulnerable with each other in a way that, again, in a lot of these like Marvel movies, they undercut those scenes every time it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow a scene of a character going is the most tension I've seen in a movie in a while, where you're like, is he going to get to him in time? Is he going to save him in time?
Mm-hmm.
When he's trying to find him underneath in the kind of underground cell that they're holding him in. Like, Marvel, take note. This is how you do an action movie with stakes, with people playing characters that the audience is invested in. Like, here you go. This is how you do it. Right. Give them time to breathe. Look, there's like 4, I think there's 4 action set pieces in this movie? 5 probably?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
But like in a 3-hour movie, that might not seem like much, but one of them is an hour long.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
well, and it's like, Marvel goes, I love Marvel movies, not all of them though, because then you get a movie like The Eternals where it's just like, there's too much room to breathe. There's not enough action. There's too many characters. And this movie is 3 hours long. You get 2 main characters. You get a couple villains. You get a couple supporting characters. I don't need to know the name of the guy who is throwing the meat to the tiger, or the guy, it might be the same guy, the guy who throws the snake at him. It's just like, yeah, I don't need to know these guys. They're important, but they're just here to serve a purpose, So, yeah, I mean, I think the thing, again, going back to Woo, the thing that I like about this that you're just kind of talking about is that there's the melodrama, that we're allowed to be very emotional, that we wear our feelings on our sleeve, that, that we have this bromance that's going on. Just the idea of these 2 characters coming together and having this natural affinity basically is because they are both superheroes, that they are able to communicate from the bridge down to the crowd kind of thing. They recognize, what was it? Like game recognizes game. Exactly. These guys have it.
Exactly. And you're completely right. And, I'm trying to think about like the last Marvel movie I watched, Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. None of the action in that movie is remotely memorable.
No.
And there's like a point where there's like a giant octopus climbing on the outside of a building and Doctor Strange is hurling cars and stuff. It's like, man, that cost more. That whole scene cost God knows how much money. And they spent however long pre-vising and yet a shot of Raju with the spotlight behind him is more exciting for me than all of the action in Doctor Strange. The shot of Beam jumping out of that van with all those animals is just it feels so novel and fresh, and again, it feels so culturally Indian. That's the other thing that's so important is this is not S.S. Ramajoli making a MCU film. He's making an Indian cinema film that's an action movie. And that's the other thing I really appreciate is ultimately at its core, it is a film about two Indian characters, and it feels it.
It's very Indian, but it is not exclusionary. I felt I was able to relate to this right away, and he was able to just lead me into this, and I was there for it. You know, I never felt like, what's going on here? What's happening with this culture? And do I have to now go to Wikipedia and look up the Raj and all this kind of stuff? No. You know, like if you know that stuff, great. You got a little background. Okay, perfect. But it's such a whole piece that you don't necessarily need to know anything. You don't have to do outside reading for this. You know, you just come in, you're shown these guys, you're shown their motivation, you know where they're coming from. And when you don't know where the one character's coming from, it makes it even better when you do find out where he's coming from.
Right. And you're completely right. That is the other big piece of this movie that you cannot ignore. It has a really good twist, like a really genuinely good twist that I kind of didn't see coming, actually. Like, I probably should have, given that the character of Raju is so painted in a lovable and likable way. Like, even though he is a badass that scares everybody, he's still painted in a way that it's like you can't help but love him, and you can't help but want to like smack him on the back and break your hand in doing so type. Well, yeah, I mean, in that initial, I mean, I haven't seen a character introduced as well as Raju is in a movie in such a long time. That scene at the beginning where he's fighting all those people, it's just like, this is how you introduce a character and just make, without them uttering a single word, and you make them into just like, he's so badass that by the end of the movie, he is the physical embodiment of Rama, and you believe it. And the characters, the villains that are fighting him are just like terrified. Because again, like, he is a god made real. He is shooting flaming arrows at people, shooting arrows with grenades on them too.
Yes, I love it.
Like I said, like, there's so much in this movie. We're probably not going to talk about every single thing because it is a 3-hour long movie. But there's just so many things that it's like, how has nobody ever done this before?
Right.
That's like that's my ultimate question here is like, how have we not seen some of the things that we've seen in this movie? And then I realize it's because like I don't want to be that guy, but all of a sudden everything feels the same. And when you watch something like this, it's like, this feels so fresh. Even if we weren't getting all these MCU and DCEU and big blockbuster movies that we are so accustomed to getting, even if we weren't getting them, this would still feel so fresh and so new and exciting. And again, I can't help but sing the praises of the two leads enough. I mean, they're both amazing. Oh, yeah. They're so good. I would watch them in anything.
So charismatic.
Right.
And yeah, you just feel for them so much.
Yeah. Ram Charan as Raju, he's kind of a stoic badass, but then you understand it's kind of a facade. It's a little bit of a put on. And that he does have this really traumatic backstory. I mean, Beam doesn't even have the backstory of that. Beam is kind of a cipher throughout the movie in a lot of ways, which is funny because, again, like, the movie is effectively trying to convince you through the first hour and a half, this is Beam's movie, but it is 100% Raju's story.
It totally is. Yeah. And that's the best twist of all. Yeah,
I agree. That is the best twist of the movie, is that it is Raju's story almost entirely. But but because of the storytelling, I guess, technique that they're using,
he's defined by Beam. You know, Beam helps focus us. He's that diamond for the laser that helps us focus on what Raju really is.
Right. And that for me, I think, is just, it's such smart writing, and it's such a smart way of structuring your story. And what's interesting is the story is by one person and the dialogue is by someone else, which I think it's something is a thing that is in Indian cinema a lot, but you don't see that you don't see that a lot. You see it in American cinema, but I wonder, do you perceive it to be the same way as story by, screenplay by? Because that's not the way I interpret it.
No. I mean, we probably have that more than we know of. There's probably people that are just there for dialogue polishes, or just they're known for their snappy dialogue. It's like, get me a Shane Black here. I need somebody
an Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, I need somebody to punch this up. Like, I don't care about, like, the action set pieces are great, but I need the quips. You know, I need the Stephen E. D'Souza's to come in here and give me the funny lines.
Right. And again, I don't know if that's what this is, but it's interesting because, again, it feels like the action is written by someone who knows how to write action, and the dialogue is written by someone who knows how to write compelling character relationships. And frankly, if that's what it is, it really works. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense in a compartmentalization of tasks way, if that makes sense. Like, if I were to make a movie, I'm not sure I wouldn't want to do it any differently. Like, I want to find someone who knows how to write action set pieces, because as opposed to it being on the page, then they fight. It's like, this is all clearly very well mapped out ahead of time.
Yeah.
But then I want someone to come in and really give me some hard hitting, punchy dialogue. And you get that too. So I know, I was talking with some of my Indian friends today, and one of my friends was like, "Did you like it?" I was like, "Yeah, it was a lot of fun." He was like, "It was a little over the top for me." It's like, it was just like,
so you've got somebody who's telling you it's over the top. I've got somebody telling me it's too violent, and it's just like, but I'm eating it up with the
And here we are reveling in it, like, yeah, give me more, like,
please.
And that's the funny thing. Like, I think. I don't want to be those people, but we say it almost every single time we do one of these Indian cinema films. This just makes me want to watch more Indian cinema.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know how it couldn't.
I want to see, like you said, I want to see all the things. I want to see every time these guys have been on screen, because they are so compelling. I want to see more of the director's work. I want to see the writer's work. The composer, everybody. It's like, yes, please, just give me more. Give me more.
Yeah. And for me, it's this real fun opportunity with this show to watch these movies that are this movie's just sitting on Netflix. People are going and watching what instead? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this movie is the kind of movie that I could tell even the most apprehensive of my friends to be like, you need to check this movie out. Because I sent you know what I did? I sent a couple video clips of this movie when I was watching it. I was filming my screen, and I was sending a couple video clips to people that I know. And they were like, what movie is this? And I was like, Triple R, and you have to watch it. And they were like, oh, what's it on? I was like, it's on Netflix. And they're like, okay, I'm watching it. Like, that for me is a small litmus test for the Western audiences. And we talked about this on the first episode, Cullen and I did, where it's, it's becoming more prevalent for Western audiences to have access to these movies. Now with like Netflix and streaming, there's no excuse anymore. But I am with you. Like, I hope that they make a sequel. And if they do make a sequel, I will go and see it in the theater. You will see me in the theater for this movie. RRR2, I'll be there. No questions asked.
It's amazing how this is broken through. Like, every week I watch Honest Trailers and I watch Pitch Meeting on YouTube. I'm just like refreshing my computer at 1:00 on Tuesdays, waiting for the new Honest Trailer. I have yet to figure out what Ryan's schedule is with Pitch Meeting, because everything's kind of fucked up with his channel, but hopefully eventually I'll realize what day and time he drops new episodes. They both did episodes on Triple R, and it's so easy to get because of Netflix, but it was so popular and had so many people talking about it that they ended up doing it. The guys from Corridor Crew that do VFX Artists React, they did an episode on it. So it's just like, all of a sudden, it's just like in my wheelhouse. And it's in my realm now. I'm just getting all of these things where it's just like RRR over and over and over again. And I think just Corridor Crew had their video out, and I was just like, I want to see what you guys are talking about, but I have to see the movie first. And again, it's on Netflix. It's so easy to get.
Yeah, you can, you should, and you will watch it, dear listener, if you haven't. And this is the first the first Indian cinema film that I have seen since DDLJ, where I'm like, this movie is probably going to be popular for a very long time. It's going to be well regarded for a very long time until the next one comes out. It's the most expensive Indian cinema film until the next one comes out. Robo was an expensive Indian cinema film, but people have differing opinions on it. Everything I've seen about this movie is like overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the reviews I've read have enjoyed it. There have been some minor quibbles. And like you said, you talk to people that who have seen it. I talk to people who I know have seen it. I'm not going to say that they're wrong, but that's what I wanted, so I can't complain about it. I can't say it didn't give me over-the-top action because it delivered that in spades.
It scratched such an itch that I didn't even know that I had.
Agreed. And by the end of it, again, do I want to see more action? Do I want to see more set pieces? Sure. What I really want to see are Rama Rao and Ram Charan again as those characters or in something else. Yeah. That's all I want to see. Because again, I love Amitabh. I love Rajnikant. I love SRK. All of the Indian leads that I've seen, I have fallen immensely in love with. And here's two more to add to the list.
Yeah. Yep.
That's, that every time I watch one of these movies, all I can think is like, why do I watch anything else?
Right.
That's what it feels like in a way. Like, I know why I watched something else because these movies tend to be 3 hours long. And that is a big time commitment. I mean, it just is. Like, it is a big time commitment because 3 hours is a lot of time. But when it flies by, what does it matter?
Right. Well, it's also nice, too, because I've noticed there used to be one movie theater near me that would show Indian films. Now it's almost every single movie theater near me has slots open for Indian films, which is fantastic. I know part of that is the pandemic effect in that there's not as much product out there, but I'm eating it up. I'm just so glad when I can look at the local movie times on my app for AMC or MJR or any of these other theaters, Imagine. And it's just like, oh, yeah. And there's this Indian film playing this weekend. I'm like, thank you. This is wonderful.
I agree with you 100%. I wish that they were showing him here in town. I don't think we have a big enough Indian population in the Midwest where I live, unfortunately, which is a shame. But I think they show him in Omaha. So there you go. And you know what? This movie is the kind of movie where you could show it in an American cinema. I would contend you could almost show this movie without subtitles if you really were hell-bent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And still kind of understand what's going on. I mean, you'll undercut all of the emotional growth of the characters, but you can still see all the crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, last night I started to watch it in Brazilian Portuguese.
I did that by accident too.
They must have like the defaults on or something because I'm just like, they're not speaking Telugu. What the hell is this? And I'm listening for a few minutes. I'm like, it sounds Spanish. No, not quite Spanish. And then finally I was like, oh, this is Portuguese. Why are they speaking Portuguese?
When Ray Stevenson's character said país,
yes,
I was like, okay, this is definitely not Hindi. Like, pretty far from Hindi. Mm-hmm. God, I you know what though? That is the other thing I did want to mention. We mentioned Ray Stevenson once already, but I hope that more American actors go and work in Indian cinema because it's primarily British actors and like Australian actors, but like American actors, I have not seen a lot of American actors in Indian cinema, which is a good thing. Uh-huh. Because obviously employ more Indian actors, please. But at the same time, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah. Even if it was a cameo, even if it was like Brad Pitt walks by or something, But yeah, I'm glad too that, I didn't realize obviously that it was Ray Stevenson. I didn't realize it was Alison Doody because they're not taking the time to be like, oh, look at these people. Look at, like really shine that spotlight on them and be like, oh, look at, here's this actor that you might know from something else because probably people don't, I'm sure there are tons of Indian people that have seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, but it's not top of mind. And they're, these guys are playing the villains and I'm absolutely fine with that. I kind of love that they are, there's not, other than the one lady, there's not a heroic white person in here.
Right.
And she's not some sort of white savior either. She just is a tool for him to use to get to the next level.
Yeah. No, I I agree. Like I would like to see more white actors in Indian cinema, but at the same time, if it were to be something to what you're talking about, where it's like we're gonna like make it a point, like I don't care. I don't care then. Because like this is the right way to do it. Include them in a way that's like they're part of the movie as like a villain or as a cameo. But like I don't want to see an Indian cinema film where there is an American actor or an English actor as the lead.
Oh God, no.
Unless it like because it could work. It could work. You know what? You know what you could do? Just spitball in here. You could have essentially Red Heat, but set in New Delhi or Mumbai, and it's the character coming from the States to India, and that I would watch that movie.
Yeah,
in a heartbeat.
it's rush hour
in India.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like, how has that not been made?
Yeah,
there it is. That movie would kill, because you know what? You get you get whoever is the most charismatic American actor, and then you just one American actor. That's it. Nobody else. And then you just chalk the movie full. Make it the most expensive Indian cinema film ever made, because you include every single SRK, Rajnikant, Amitabh, like Amir Khan. Get him from the Forrest Gump movie that they're making, and like everybody. Just bring in everybody.
I went out to eat the other day and at an Indian restaurant, and there was just this huge TV, and they were playing. It was essentially music videos, but a lot of them were just scenes from a movie.
Right.
And I'm looking up there, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I know this guy. And then I see him; he's wearing a baseball cap. He's got the beard and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is from that Forrest Gump remake. Okay, so I was trying to explain that.
The official Forrest Gump remake.
I was trying to explain that to Andrea, and she's like, get out of town. How's that going to work? She's like, the historical figures? Is he meeting like Indian historical figures now? I'm like,
yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
I've heard that there's some controversy surrounding the movie, and I want to say Kareena Kapoor was complaining that not enough people are going to see the movie, I think was the issue. But I want to watch it.
Oh, yeah. I am very oddly compelled, because I imagine that the politics in it are much better than the politics in Zemeckis's.
Well, I mean, as you know what, as someone who recently read the book, I would actually suggest anybody who wants to know that story, go read the book. The book's actually really good. I enjoyed the book immensely. The movie, maudlin and saccharine and about as just melancholy as it can get. But I think the next time you and I do one of these episodes together, I think we should watch that movie if we can.
Yeah, sounds good.
Lal Singh Chadha with Amir Khan, of all people, who we've seen now a couple times. You've seen him in Lagan.
Amazing. Yeah,
I've seen him in Lagan, and then Rangeela, which is just what can you say about Rangeela? Right. My God.
What's that one? The one Dangal, he's fucking amazing in that. And then the
Three
one
Idiots.
That's a good one. The one where he's an alien, is that PK?
I think so. Yeah.
That's
I haven't seen that.
Too.
I haven't seen that one. I've heard
that's
about
a lot
it,
of fun.
Have you seen Three Idiots?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Three Idiots is amazing. It's about like three friends at it's kind of a takedown and a hard look at the like Indian education system and how it like affects those who are inside of it and the expectations and stuff. It's a lot of fun. I did an episode on it, I think last year or the year before. Again, but like there's so many of these movies. Like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. But no, I'm, the Forrest Gump remake, like the fact that it's a like official movie on top of everything else, like it's funny. Like we mentioned, like I expect that when we watch that movie, there will be songs, there will be those things in that movie. This movie doesn't have it, and yet it's just it. This is the most, like you said, this is the most movie I've seen in a long time. Yeah. And this is one of the, I don't want to say this is one of the best movies I've ever seen, but I have not seen anything else like it.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big compliment given how many movies I've seen. I think you would agree with me. Like we've seen things similar, but like something like this, I have never seen anything like this. And I can't wait to see what the director comes up with next, because if this movie and Bahubali are any indication of his previous body of work, he can only get better. So that for me is also immensely exciting. So Mike, for you, final thoughts on Triple R?
Watch it. That's all I can say. I mean, you have to see this movie. It is so much fun. You know, when I had somebody described, it was my friend Mike Thompson described The Killer to me. He's like, it's the Evil Dead of action films, just to give me that mayhem and stylization, the quick cutting, all these kind of things. He was able to paint a picture in my head with that. I would say that this is very similar as far as just being such a cinematic experience, so much fun, so moving. You just experience every emotion while you're watching this. It's terrific.
I think that is almost every Indian film that I've ever seen. You experience every emotion while watching it. And like, I think for me, that is what sparks so much joy inside of me when I think about watching these movies, is that just like by the end of it, I'm like, I haven't seen anything like this. I've never seen characters treated this way. I've never seen a movie approach these characters in this way. I've never seen anything like this. And I say that every time, and I won't stop saying it, because I feel like this is a privilege that we have access to these movies, that we have easy access to these movies, because for so long, like you mentioned, when you were first starting doing podcasting or even trying to find these movies back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was no Netflix and streaming. How would you have ever seen any of this? But now we have such a privilege that we can just turn on Netflix and see these movies. And it's not just RRR. It's a ton of things. Even though they've taken things off, there's still plenty. So I agree with you 100%. If you have heard about RRR, you've probably seen it at this point. And if you haven't heard about it and you've sat here through this entire episode and not watched it yet, please do me a favor. Please do us a favor and go and enjoy one of the crazier movies that I have seen in a long time, and one of the best action movies, I think, of the last 10 years.
Yeah. You're not doing us a favor. You're doing yourself a favor.
Exactly. So Mike, until we record another one of these bad boys, where can people find you? What's going on over at the Projection Booth podcast?
Oh, gosh. Well, every week we're looking at a different film, try to put in context, talk to some of the people behind it, have a good conversation about it. And just, we're trying to be, kind of the NPR of movie podcasts, let's say. So trying to do it upright, give you something other than a couple chuckleheads talking about movies.
Whoa.
Yeah. What you like about that, huh?
All
maybe 3 chuckleheads.
Oh, wow. Now you're pushing it. Where can people find that show, Mike?
ProjectionBoothPodcast.com.
And as for this show, Bollywood Cinema Club, you're already listening to it, so you know where to find it. For me, cstasher.com. That's my link tree. Go there. If you like this show, I have done other episodes on the Culture Cast of Indian cinema, but this is going to be the place where we talk about Indian cinema film a lot, almost primarily. I'm not saying I won't cover it on my own show, but there's no need to cover it on my show if we have a show all about it. So this is where you're going to want to come to listen to more episodes of me talking about Indian cinema with a variety of guests. Mike will pop in from time to time. Hopefully it'll be some new people that I've never even talked to. So until then, Mike, I want to thank you for joining me, for picking this movie.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on, and I'm so glad you're doing this show.
Me too. It's, again, this is only like the second or third episode I've recorded, but I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. Not even I don't know where this show goes, but I'm excited, and this movie has made me even more excited. So thank you, Mike, again for the suggestion and the pick, because it was a good one. So, and I guess we'll catch you on the next episode.